So you've also become a bit of a spokesperson for the food movement. Was that did where did that interest develop? And basically, there's I think there's this big concept, a growing concept and understanding that we're eating a lot of poison, processed
Yeah.
food, the health of the entire world, but especially the U.S. At least I can speak about the U.S. I know less about, honestly, Australia. I was under the impression that Europe was a little better, or maybe a lot better, but generally speaking, our food supply chain is becoming sort of, it's got to this inflection point where it's just it's almost better to stop eating food, it seems. And you've sort of become this. I love it because, to me personally, there is no better way to comment on something than satire. And
I
you've
think I agree.
you've absolutely nailed the satirical sort of, you put it in a way that it's a bit bombastic, and it's like you can't not agree that all somebody is doing is acting like this is somebody else actually acts. And you're like, well, that's well, you know what? He's right. This is ridiculous. So how did that all come about?
Man, it's look, I could probably talk for hours. It's a very, very long tale of chapters. But like begins with a every story begins with a kind of a point, an inflection point, or whatever you call it. And for me, I think all of our worlds started to unravel in various different ways during the pandemic, and
Mm,
I, we were stuck in lockdown. Australia was a very heavily locked down country. What happened was this. I've always kind of been pretty left of center, I guess, politically.
hmm
Kind of a Democrat if I was in America, sort of a liberal Democrat in the UK. I was a signed up member of the Green Party in the UK. I was very pro environment. I was a bit of a tree
hmm
hugger. I was a vegetarian for a while. I did all that in my 20s and all that. And what happened during COVID was I, like a lot of people, just had this epiphany of holy shit, everything I believe, everything I've been told has been a lie.
hmm
I don't believe anything it's all bullshit.
hmm
It's all bullshit. Like both my wife and I were it was this huge sense of disappointment, sadness, anger. Like they've been lying to us. They've all been lying for years, for decades. All these politicians from both sides of the aisle, from every color, they've all been lying. The red, the blues, the greens, all lying.
You nailed it.
And I realized during lockdown, because we are Australians, they were so authoritarian. It was like the neighbor. My personal trainer came around. We were doing some yoga. The neighbors, the cops came to the fucking door. Cops. Oh, you've it's been reported that you've had somebody in your house. Yeah, I've got my personal trainer here. Oh, that's against the rules. I'm like, what is this, communist Russia? How did you
Wow.
know? He said, oh, one of your neighbors has reported you to us. I'm like,
Whoa.
what the fuck? A neighbor in our cul-de-sac? In a
So it was a
really kind of,
law. It was actual law in Australia that you could, like, I'm
oh man,
pretty sure in the U.S. you could, it was recommended, and I don't think
dude,
you could actually police could get involved though.
welcome to Australia, which has become like the UK. It's become basically authoritarian, communist, fascist, fucking
Wow.
police state.
I did
There,
not know
there,
that.
there are people in England now in jail for 2 years for a tweet. For a tweet, 2 years for a tweet. But don't worry, if you're an illegal immigrant and you smash up a car, we'll give you a house. Anyway, that's another story. Um, but what happened during COVID was I realized the government is not there. They're not coming to save you. No one is coming to
Mm,
save you. No one cares about your health. No one cares about your bank balance. No one cares about your mental well-being. The
Hmm.
only person who can help you is you.
You. That's fact.
And this nanny state, entitlements, welfare, we've government. It's become so bloated. When I was growing up in the 70s, when you signed on, when you need to sign on your unemployment benefit, in Australia it's called Centrelink. You'd hit rock bottom because you couldn't find a job, but you had to look, you had to show you were looking for work, and it was embarrassing to be getting your paycheck from the government every week, and you couldn't
Yeah.
wait to get a job. Now it's this kind of like, just the government's just going to give me money, and they'll just give me money, give me money, give me money, and so you've got this bloated welfare state.
Everybody had that for 2 years. It was
And
like that.
everybody had that for 2 years. It was just this kind of massive kind of money printing
Probably
sense of
destigmatized it,
entitlement.
actually.
Yeah. So all during COVID, I educated myself about what fiat currency is and what real money is, and I educated myself about gold and silver and Bitcoin, and I realized that I've learned what inflation was, what money printing was, what fractional reserve banking is. I educated myself on that.
Mm.
I also educated, and then when the vaccines came in, I'm like, I don't want to get that. My wife's like, I don't want to get that either. And all of our friends are like, oh, you have to get it. Come on, you got to do it. Don't be a granny killer. And my mom's going, ah. And we just started going away from mainstream media, going down the YouTube rabbit hole, and listening to people like RFK, and going, what's wrong with this picture? What's going on? And suddenly you get this whole view that people like, Fauci and Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum, and it's like, they do not have our best interests at heart. It's absolutely bloody obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made me so sad. Really sad, man. I was really sad's the only word I can think of, that I have spent the last 30 years believing in a lie, believing in some, and I realized it wasn't about left or right. It was about authoritarianism and libertarianism. And then I discovered what libertarianism meant and what anarcho-capitalism meant. I used to read Noam Chomsky, and then I read a lot of politics, a lot of philosophy, a lot of history. I'm well educated and well read.
Yeah.
But I realized that I'd been indoctrinated with lies and bullshit. And my wife and I both decided that we would use this time in lockdown to get fit and get healthy and build up our immune system, so that when we got COVID, we would get it once, and that would mean we'd have immunity to it, because that's how viruses work, because I did the research. And so we thought, bring it on. Let's get COVID. We'll get it, and then we'll never get it again. And all our friends are going, yeah, you're terrible, you right-wing. I'm like, what's right-wing about racist? What's racist about that? You guys are all losing the plot, because they're all following. Sorry if I'm getting too heavy, but they're all reading the media,
true.
the TV, and they're fallen into this mainstream media, which isn't journalism. They're there to sell you. It's there to sell you stuff. It's about advertising, and it's about money. It's about business. The CNN and MSNBC and Fox and all these things, they don't care about telling you the truth. They want you to keep watching. They just want eyeballs.
That's it.
And people who still read those newspapers and still watch those mainstream news channels, it does my head in. Because I'm like, oh my God, please, yeah, but RFK, and Trump's, no, shut the fuck up. It's like, just open your eyes, right?
Well, it's very well established that all they're trying to do is regurgitate to you what you already believe, because that makes you want to keep
the
watching.
echo chamber and the whole thing. And you've got to have balance, right? So I started watching, Joe Rogan. I started watching Tom Billio, Impact Theory. I started going, oh, actually, I can watch 3-hour podcasts with really interesting people who work in medicine, in finance, in crypto, in health, in fitness,
Yeah.
And I suddenly was going, these are all these amazing people. And I discovered and I stumbled on Dr. Sean Baker on a Bitcoin podcast with Anthony Pompliano, and Sean Baker, who I'd never seen before, started talking about this carnivore diet thing, and I'm like, what's that? So my personal trainer and I, because we train 3 times a week with boxing, weights, yoga, movement, all this amazing stuff for the body. I was 115 kilos at 50 years old. And I'm now 85, so I've lost 30.
You know what that is in pounds? I'm going to do the little Google here.
No idea. So I was
Let's see.
115 kilos.
115, so that's 250. 250
Yeah.
pounds down
And now
to
I'm 85
187. So you lost 75 pounds.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
in 3 years.
Wow.
From giving up carbs, sugar, vegetables, grains, and from moving my body.
Yep.
And meditating and grounding. But anyway, I got into all this kind of stuff, and Kevin, my trainer, and I, we decided to go carnivore at the same time. And we did carnivore for a month, then 2 months, then 3 months, and I didn't snore any. My snoring stopped. My headaches went. My inflammation went. My hemorrhoids went. My nails started growing back. My gums stopped bleeding. I stopped getting the 4 o'clock carb crash. I stopped getting agitated. I was much more pleasant to be around in the car. I wasn't angry at dickhead drivers. I suddenly found myself not being as angry with the media and the government and all the liars. I just kind of felt myself going, I'm reaching some kind of higher plane than all you lot. And so,
Interesting.
I felt myself not bothering with a few of my friends. They weren't bothering with me. We kind of drifted because we started not being aligned. I'm not talking about just politically, but we just weren't aligned on quite a lot of things. And I just felt there was this thing with doing carnivore where I felt like I was becoming really, really fit and healthy. I felt really good. I had so much energy, Chris. I've never had this fucking energy. Like normally I'd have to coffee, Red Bull, whatever, grab a candy bar, to get some energy. No, literally, I was just eating steak and eggs. And then so
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, so I'm sort of 2 years into this carnivore diet thing, and got into Bitcoin and got into gold and got into educating myself about freedom and about sovereignty and about self-reliance. When you realize no one's coming to save you, it really does change your outlook.
It's a lonely feeling.
Yeah, it's a very lonely feeling because there's so many people out there who are just like, yeah. But anyway, Sean Baker? Do you know Dr. Sean Baker? He's
no, we don't.
He's an
actually.
orthopedic surgeon, ex-rugby player. He's 57. He's about 6'5". He's like he and Anthony Chafee are kind of like the godfathers of carnivore. And so Sean Baker and Dr. Anthony Chafee were the two doctors who I was getting all my information off, and Dr. Ken Berry from Oklahoma, the 3 guys. But Chafee and Baker specifically, both rugby players, both big guys. And I loved watching Chafee's interviews and Baker's interviews. And Sean Baker does these videos where he eats a steak, and next to him, split screen on his YouTube is somebody eating candy or eating McDonald's, and somebody really fat eating sugar and feeding what are they called, Slim Jims to their kids and whatever, and all that, and Oreos, and like I crush up the Oreos on my kids' breakfast, later on their front hoop, all this, and isn't it amazing? And I'm so fat, and I'm a proud body, positive.
Yeah, self-love,
all that kind of crap, and then the purple hair and all the fucking bullshit. And I'm what's your pronoun? I'm a they them fucking dog cat person. Oh, fuck off, and so Sean Baker's doing these videos, and then there was this video, and I used to watch his YouTube, and there was this video that my wife went, you've got to see this Sean Baker video that he's put on YouTube. And the voiceover was, do you want to go to a place where there are no women and no vegans allowed? And I'm like, And no alcohol? I'm like, yeah. And it's in Bali. And so there's this place in Bali which is called the Bali Time Chamber. And you go in, it's based on the Dragon Ball Z, where you go in and you come out, from the time chamber stronger, fitter, whatever. And the guy who started it was a fitness influencer from Switzerland. And he made a lot of money. He had 17 million fucking followers or whatever. Huge, big, and he made money out of Bitcoin. And he bought a plot of land in Bali, in the mountains in Bali in Indonesia, and he built this resort with a gym and a cold plunge, hot plunge, sauna, rooms, showers,
Yeah.
and it's fully catered, and it's not cheap. You have to be, you got to be, it's for a certain type of man, but he decided men only, no women, no partying, no drugs, no alcohol, and no vegans. There's vegetables, but it's a meat diet, and there's a
Yeah.
full on gym. And if you're a vegan, you can't. And if you're a woman, no, it's only for men. And my
Yeah.
wife said, "I'm signing you up. You're going." And I went, well, it cost. So I went for a month, and it cost me about $12,000 for a month,
Wow.
all inclusive. All inclusive. Eat as much meat as you want. And I went there for a month. And on the first week, and I was telling everybody about carnivore. They're all saying, why are you only eating meat? Why are you only eating meat? And meditating every day, going to the waterfalls, sun salutation in the morning, yoga, hot plunge, cold plunge, sauna, deadlifts, pull-ups. And I wasn't strong, but I was, it was great.
Yeah.
And I was going for runs and going down to the waterfall, and all guys from all over the world, man. There was guys from America, Argentina, Canada, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Spain, Russia, Holland, France, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, England. I mean, you
Wow.
name it. There were, and guys would just come and go. You could go for it's minimum 7 days. So I'm there 4 weeks on the set, and I'm telling everybody, and I'm showing them all these videos of Sean Baker and Anthony Chaffee, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, the carnivore, the guy that came up with the term carnivore diet. So I'm there doing some bench presses, and I look up, and every time you hear the scooter go, so the scooter comes up with a new guest. They kind of ring a bell, ding, 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 because a new guest has arrived. And in walks Anthony Chaffee.
Oh, wow.
Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and a guy called Simon Lewis, who I didn't know at the time. And I'm like, what the actual fuck are you doing here? I've just been talking about you for a week to these guys.
Yeah.
And so he got everybody on carnivore for the whole thing. And one guy converted them all to the carnivore diet. And one night we all had these huge tomahawks and everything. And then Simon Lewis runs How To Carnivore. And he said to me, I was doing all my voices and being, just being the clown, being the guy that sits there and does the voices and who you can't shut up, right? And, oh shit, because I do talk a lot. And Simon said, do you do Instagram? I said, I don't even have a smartphone, because I didn't even have a smartphone. And he said, you should do videos on Instagram. I said, what do you mean? He said, he said, have you heard of Eddie Abu? Have you heard of Eddie Abu, Chris?
Mm-mm.
No, it's Eddie Abu's got 4 million followers. He's Ghanaian English. He's an ex-bodybuilder. And his catchphrase is, wake the fuck up. And he goes around all I eat is eggs and steak. So if you're eating any other shit, wake the fuck up. And he's got this African London accent, and he's meaty guy, and his videos are brilliant. And he got a lot of followers. And he said, can you do him? So I went into the jungle and I just improvised to camera a monologue as Eddie Abu, going, I'm here in the jungle and I can smell all the oxalates and the phytates and the phytochemicals and the leptins, and it's really bad, and the anti-nutrients are in the plants, and like, oh, there's a civet cat, there's breakfast. Love you, Eddie. And I collaborated with him thinking he'd ignore me. Anyway, he accepted my collaboration, and my very first post got like 30,000 views.
Wow.
And Simon went, you should do another one. And I'm like, right. So I started vlogging every day while I was in Bali, eating steak, talking about eating meat, talking about eggs and nutrition, and getting all these interesting comments and followers from people who were like, they're a carnivore, or they're in the health space, and talking with the guys in Bali. We were all talking about RFK. Everybody there, no one there was pro-vax. We were all kind of like vaccine hesitant, or hadn't been. A few people had been vaccinated, but most of us had not had the COVID vaccine. We were all into freedom, independence, sovereignty, crypto, you name it, the whole 9 yards. And I felt for the first time in 3 years, because of what we were talking about earlier about COVID and being in lockdown, and how lonely, when you said it was lonely, I felt that I had met a community of like-minded men who were all about self-improvement. And everybody's there for a different reason, man. Everybody was there for a different reason. Some people were there because they were working on their businesses. Other people were there because they'd just gone through a divorce. Other people were there because they were recovering drug addicts or alcoholics. Other people were there because they were looking after their fitness and their weight. Everybody had a story, and we had a fire pit, and we all gathered around the fire pit and exchanged our stories, and it was a real brotherhood, man. It was this amazing brotherhood from people from all over the world. We had Muslims, Hindus, Jews, Christians, Catholics, atheists, all together, all sharing bread and eating together. And I thought, this is what I signed up for when I joined this planet. I didn't sign up for that fucking shit that we've been dealt with all these years, about, you don't get a jab, you lose your job, and you can't go out, and you can't do this, and you got to wear a mask, and you can't do that. And, as Bill Hicks would say, here's American Gladiators. Here's 150 channels of this shit. Eat more Coke, eat more McDonald's, go back to bed, America. Go back. Your government will look after you. Go back to sleep, America. Your government will look after you. And, Bill Hicks was talking about this in 1991, for fuck's sake. And he was doing George Carlin, who was talking about, hey, they're all in one big club and we ain't in it. And I was like,
Yeah.
So suddenly, I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but that's just what
this
I do.
Is cool, man.
In Bali, it was like this a million light bulbs went off in my head, Chris. And I went, I think I know who I am supposed to be now. I think I know now what I think I enjoy and who I like being with. And they're not people with Trump derangement syndrome. They're not people who've had 6 boosters. They're not people who says there's no inflation. There's not people who you got to buy an investment property for your portfolio, because, property only They're not people who go, there's no point voting for independents because they never win. I was like, I'm actually around people who fucking can see beyond their bloody nose. And so I came back to Australia, and Simon and Anthony and I saw a lot of each other. Anthony lives in Perth. He's American, but lives in Perth. And Simon lives in Sydney. And Simon and Anthony both said, look, if you do any posts on Instagram, collaborate with us, because I had, 500 followers. Anthony Chafee's got 500,000 followers. How to Carnivore's got a couple of 100,000 followers. And if I'm collaborating with them, then I'm sort of, my posts are going on their pages.
Yep.
And so I came back to Sydney, and I had shaved my head when I was in Bali, and I went and shaved my beard off, and I've got a Star Trek outfit because I used to be a big Trekker when I was a young man. And I thought, I can finally do Picard. So I put on my Star Trek outfit, and I got my iPad, and I propped it up in front of
I saw this one.
Kelly, and I just did my very first Picard was just talking about steak and butter. And I've just bought this steak, and I bought this butter, and I was like, Jean-Luc Picard, because the replicator's not working, da-da-da-da-da. And I posted it, and it got 10,000 views in an hour. I'm like, what's this? So going back to what we were talking about earlier, I'm getting validation. I'm getting people who are saying, I like what you're doing. I like this, as opposed to the 3 years of criticism of you're wrong. You're a fascist, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're a granny killer, you're paranoid, you're a conspiracy theorist. Actually, I'm getting people going, hey, we love what you're saying. We love your message. Do more, do more, do more.
I was one of those.
Very long answer to your
question. It's a good
but
answer.
it all and everything has grown from that. Suddenly it was the Maha movement, it was RFK, it was like, but well before Trump, when RFK first said he was going to run as an
Hmm.
independent, I
Yeah.
100% I put my hat in the ring with him. I got my Kennedy 24 hat, my Kennedy 24 t-shirt, which my brother-in-law got because he lives in Philadelphia. And I wore them out, and people would be looking, oh, he's that weirdo with the funny voice who's an anti-vaxxer. And I'm like, let me strap you down and show you how great Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is and what an awesome fucking guy he is. Oh, he'll never win. He'll never win. And I'm like, well, he might. And then when he sided with Trump and he went behind, and he backed Trump, I went, this is a turn up for the books, because
Hmm.
I was a never Trumper. I was like, oh, Trump, awful man,
Right.
narcissist, boorish. But kind of like he's kind of his second go round. I'm going, he's all right actually. I don't mind him. I mean, compared to Kamala Harris, anybody's better than fucking Kamala Harris.
That
But
was a
I
weird one.
suddenly
That was
that
a
was a
weird one.
I'm from a middle class family. Oh, awful. That fucking woman. But the Donald is a very interesting guy. Sort of, he loves the Bitcoin, he loves his steak, but there's so many great people. There's so many. Melania loves his beef tallow on his face, great skin. So I went onto Amazon and I started buying wigs and costs. Oh, I'll get a red tie, I'll get an American lapel pin, I'll get a blonde wig, I'll get a MAGA hat. So I thought, I'm just going to start being really creative, doing characters that for voices I can do, but talking about meat and talking
Hmm.
about health. And the more I went down that rabbit hole, the more I learned about seed oils, and then the more I learned about regenerative farming and about sequestering carbon and about CO2 and about methane emissions. And I'm going, there was this layer after layer. I'm going,
Hmm.
it started because I wanted to get healthy by going on this carnivore diet because of Sean Baker. And it has become something far bigger than I ever thought it would, because I now am really into, proteins, fats, omega
Hmm.
3s, heme iron. And I was talking to my mum the other, she's 88, and I was talking to my mum. She said, well, why don't you just go and become a doctor then? And because she's got diabetes, and I said, you should really stop eating bread. And she's like, well, my doctor says fiber's good for me. And I'm like,
Mm.
fiber has no nutrition. It goes through. You don't need fiber, mummy dearest. You should be eating steak. Oh, no one can. I can't afford to eat steak. Steak's for rich people. And I'm talking to this 88-year-old woman in London, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to change her mind. I'm not going
Yeah.
to convince her. She thinks I'm. Well, I told my doctor that you're on the carnivore diet, and he said you're mad. You're just asking for heart disease, and your cholesterol. And I'm like, oh, strap me down.
Mm.
So she said, well, why don't you become a doctor? And I said, well, actually, maybe I might. Maybe I might go and get some kind of, because I'm learning so much
Yeah.
about nutrition and about the human body and about how the planet works. Stuff that a few years ago I thought the opposite of. And I
That's the
feel
crazy
like
part. Yeah, that's the
my
crazy
eyes have
thing.
been opened.
You grow up, and I'm like a child of the 80s, right? And
Me too.
man, I
How
mean,
old are you, Chris? Are you?
I'm mid 43.
Okay, so I'm 55. So yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
So seven, 80s and 90s. I mean, it was Fruity Pebbles, was a balanced breakfast, and you had Pop Tarts, right? That was like, oh look, you
What?
get bread and fruit.
And sugar, yeah. Bread, that's great.
But
It's like a peanut butter and jello sandwich all in one toaster. Great. Yeah.
it was, I mean, honestly, you look at some of the things, and to go back to your point on this grand disillusionment, where it's
Oh,
like you realize that you've just been told. I think, and I think it was easier for me, being in the military. You get disillusioned pretty quickly because you see, okay, we're obviously not here to do what they said we were. There's some sort of other bullshit going on, but I had that early because of that experience, and it didn't necessarily bum me out, but I did feel like, you know what, we're all alone on this thing, and I'll do you another one, and here'd be something interesting for you to research, and we could research this together, because I I think some of it is government, or a big part of it is government, But another part of it is, you've got these publicly traded companies, which really have become parastatal, right? They have lobbyists and they're getting grants and they're getting approvals. And in the US, you've got the FDA that approves everything and the USDA and all of these things. And when you look at the food supply chain, 100 years ago, even, which isn't that long ago, it would have been a novelty to eat something from another continent. It would have been like, wow, this is imported from Italy or France or whatever. And now it's like we just, whatever somebody puts in front of us, we eat with no questions asked. And there's a very good chance that it didn't come from this continent. There's absolutely no visibility on where it did come from, what's been done to it, what's in it. And we just didn't ask questions. And you can look, you kind of trace it back. Like there was World War II, there was the Depression, and the Dust Bowl in America, and there was just not enough food. And that's a concept that I don't think anybody alive can really fathom. Is like, if I had $1 billion right now, that I just couldn't get a steak because there isn't one. There isn't a steak, and there isn't enough food, and children are just starving in mass. And so the government had to do something. And you're like, well, grow a shitload of corn and step on it, and let's feed everybody's bellies. We'll make sugar out of the shit. We'll enrich the wheat and the grain, and we'll just make sure at least everybody's full. And so you can't necessarily fault them for doing that at the time when it's the choice between starvation and like at least get something. But then you have this conglomeration that occurs in the 50s, 60s, 70s, where you start to have the big conglomerates, Procter and Gamble and Unilever and General Mills and Kellogg, and now they're starting to consolidate this food supply chain, and now they're publicly traded. They're worried about quarterly profits. Now they have to report that they made money every 3 months, whether they did or not. And that's where I think it starts to turn to, a bit of a deliberate and sort of evil plot where it's like, well, shit, we know that enriched grain, we could make 8 loaves of bread for what used to be one. And we know that if we bleach chicken, it'll be heavier and we can sell it for more money. And if we, put all this shit in these cows, they just are fatter and fatter and fatter, like bloated ticks walking around the plains. And it gets to the point where now it is very much you're getting messages that are from these industry groups and you don't question it. It's like, oh, got milk. Okay. Everybody has a milk mustache on. And it's like, well, then milk must be good for you because they told me that. And I don't know if milk's, and I'm not saying it's not. I'm not a food expert. I tell you that right off the bat. All I think is eating the way nature intended never fails, ever. It just can't. And if you eat the things the way that they grew, that was the way that your body was designed to eat. You should eat things that came from close to you because that's the way that nature intended it. And man, it is disillusioning though. You can get some really dark places if you want to look into the food supply chain.
100%. And you want to go really dark? Talk about the wheat and feeding, where do you think all the wheat that makes the bread in Europe comes from? All
Tell
of
me
it.
the, well, I don't know.
Ukraine.
Wow.
Follow the money, man. Connect the dots. Russia wants the wheat, and Russia has the gas. I mean, let's not get
Wow.
too political, but this whole Ukraine thing, Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. The
Wow.
breadbasket of Europe. If Ukraine, if they don't care about the West doesn't care about the Ukrainian people. They care about
No.
its wheat in the same way that
Hmm.
the Americans went into the Middle East because of the oil.
Yeah.
It's a commodity. They just want the commodity. They don't care about the Ukrainian people. They just want the commodity. They don't want Putin to have it.
Hmm.
But anyway, we don't want to get shadow banned. But the thing with the food thing is, I have always tried to eat local, even when I
Hmm.
was in my 20s and 30s. Like
You were way ahead of the times
I
then.
was, yeah. And I think that was because of going to France quite a lot as a kid, as we
Yeah.
talked about earlier. Because in
Yeah.
France, there's a thing called terroir, as you know, with the cheese and the wine, and the appellations are very contrôlées by the government. So you can't call
Yes.
Camembert unless it comes from Camembert. You can't call a Bordeaux wine Bordeaux unless it comes from Bordeaux,
Yep.
Bourgogne, Côte du Rhône, whatever. So the French have had, ironically enough, through socialism, have had very strict food regulations. It's embedded in their culture. You buy cheese from your local fromagerie. You
Yep.
buy bread from your local boulangerie. You buy meat from your boucherie. The supermarkets were really only a relatively new thing. When I was traveling through France in the 70s and 80s, they didn't really have, the Carrefour and the massive
Yeah.
hypermarché. The hypermarché were a pretty new invention.
Yeah.
And even now, well, maybe not now because I haven't been to France for a while, but the last time I was in a massive supermarket in France, you would be hard pushed to go down those aisles like in America or Australia or the UK where it's like Comic-Con threw up. It's just, like boxes and
Yeah.
boxes of fucking cartoon characters going, sugar, sugar, sugar.
Hmm.
Even now, or I can say now, the last time was 10 years ago when I was last in a French supermarket. It was all fresh produce and it was all locally sourced. So I was lucky enough as a kid that I was kind of in England as well. My mother told me that she had her very first avocado in the 1970s. That was the first time avocados came to the UK was in the
Wow.
70s.
There you go. Interesting.
Because you had to eat
Yeah.
seasonally. And also, you got to remember, Chris, it was all about transport. Flying jet aircraft didn't really kind of get massive until the 70s.
Yeah.
Low cost. If you went on holiday in an airplane before the 70s, you were rich.
Oh, big time.
I mean, you were
Yeah, you were
rich.
the Beatles. Yeah.
Yeah, you people. So in I can only speak for England, but in England, not until the 1970s did the working class were they able to get on a plane and go to Spain. They
Yeah.
went
I
on
think it was
holiday
probably
in
even later
England,
in the US, really, because it's
even later in the US.
farther apart. I
Yeah,
think Europeans are more used to traveling around
yeah,
Europe. The
yeah,
US, I mean, you had intercontinental stuff, but like Pan Am, right?
yeah.
That was the 80s. It was really into the 80s when I think that became a much more common thing.
But it became low cost, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. And if it's low
Yeah.
cost, then you go, well, I can do freight low cost. And if I can do
Yeah.
freight low cost, it means I can import
Hmm.
exotic fruit from Central
Yeah.
America so that you can have bananas and mangoes and avocados
Hmm.
all year round. You lucky Western
And
people.
now it's like good luck wrenching that away. Up here in Michigan, if somebody can't get a pineapple in January, it's like,
Oh,
what's going on? This is my right to have an equatorial fruit on the 46 parallel in the middle of the winter.
it's shocking, man. It's absolutely shocking. We started having farmers markets in the UK near my place in London in the mid 90s.
Hmm.
We were having farmers markets, and you could go and get produce from farms. And I mentioned earlier that I was a signed up member of the UK Green Party, and I ran for council elections. I ran for the Greens to be a councillor. And this was in the days when the Greens weren't woke. This was before wokeism. It's when the Greens actually had some sense. And the Green. Oh, when I was a member of the Green Party, I studied a lot about permaculture. I got really into permaculture, and also I
Yeah.
learned about what organic means. And how much greenwashing goes on.
Yeah.
And I
That's,
would be going into like my local supermarket in London in the sort of, I guess I was in the 90s, early 2000s. I'd be going to a supermarket, and you'd have organic apples,
hmm
and they were from Chile. all right? And then you'd read the back and it said packed in China. So you're going, okay, so, but it's organic, right? It's organic.
Yeah.
So it's got to be good for you, right? It's organic, but it's from South America and it was packed in China. So what has that been like? How's that work? And then they had the British section with the Union Jack and the British flag where you could buy apples which were literally from an orchard within 5 miles of the supermarket.
Yeah.
But the media was so... They'd sold us all in this organic thing. The people, oh, yeah, but I'm not buying those because they're not organic. You're going, but they're from an orchard up the road. They were probably picked yesterday. No, I'd rather have the organic ones that from Chile that were packed in China and had gone halfway around the world on a jet engine. And so I started being all about reduce your carbon footprint, reduce, reuse, recycle, reduce your carbon footprint, eat local, eat seasonally to reduce your carbon footprint. Why the Greens now can't still be talking about that, I don't know. The Greens are more interested in gender ideology now instead of, where your food comes from. But when I was a Green, and when I was a signed-up member of the Green Party in the UK, it was all about lowering your carbon footprint. And that and what you eat and how you choose to eat is all about your carbon footprint. And now when they come up with all this shit about cows are causing climate change, you go, they aren't. It's total bollocks.
Yeah.
It's utter shit. They don't fart, they burp. It's cow burps that cause methane, not farts. But also, methane is formed naturally within the soil when you sequester carbon anyway, and it accounts for 0.1%, and it's a natural part of the cycle. The thing that's causing climate change is arable farming to make corn and grain and all the things they had to do in the Dust Bowl in the 30s to feed the population.
Yeah.
But they don't have to do that now.
They do not.
Monocultural farming is destroying the environment. When you see cows on a field, I'm talking about feedlot cows, I'm talking about regenerative, I'm talking about cows in pasture eating grass. Grass are little solar panels. The cows, their dung, the rain comes down. The grass is a carbohydrate for the cow. They have a ruminant, ruminant animals. They have several stomachs. The rumen manages to break down the fiber and convert the carbohydrate into their flesh. We then eat that meat, which is the most nutritionally dense, bioavailable food that we as humans, the apex predator on the planet, can eat, is grass-fed meat. We shouldn't be eating feedlot cattle who are eating grains and corn, because all we're doing is we're having these huge arable fields of monoculture to feed livestock. And that's not their natural diet. Cow's natural diet is grass. Our natural diet is meat. But because of what you were talking about earlier, the corn lobby and the politicians and all the BlackRock, Sales Street, Vanguard, who own all these food companies anyway, it's in their interest that we keep having to eat the corn. We need the corn and the soy, more corn, more soy, more corn. And if the people don't eat it, well, we'll give it to the animals. And you just go, when a vegan says, oh, but it's cruel to kill a cow, I'm like, well, hang on, that's one cow can feed my family for a year. So I'm taking one life. One life is sacrificing itself, and it doesn't know it's going to get killed. It doesn't know what's going on. It's not cruel. It's not halal or kosher.
And this is just how animals are. I mean, we're animals. You have to eat protein. You have to eat. And we were designed to. It's. I mean, there's that argument is just like a philosophical weird.
But there's so many. But man, like you've got number one, right? Kosher and halal meat. The animal has to be alive when you kill it. Right, which I think's horrible. I think it's awful that with halal meat you have to, and 100% kosher meat, the animal has to be alive when you cut its throat. You can't stun it first. Halal meat, only about 20% of halal meat has its throat slit while it's alive. Non-kosher, non-halal meat, i.e. the meat that most of us eat, unless we're Muslims or Jews, the animal is stunned. It's basically brain dead. It's killed with a bolt before its throat is cut, so it doesn't know what's happening. When I have had interesting interactions with vegans who talk about animal welfare and animal cruelty. Number one, I think the kosher we shouldn't be eating kosher meat and halal meat because it is cruel to be slitting cows' throats. I don't like that. I think we at least need to honor the animal that is sacrificing itself for us to have some nutritious food. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I say to my vegan friends, have you ever seen an animal die in the wild? It's pretty fucking brutal. They've had a really good life, and then we literally put a bolt in their head and they die instantly. Or we could just, and I said, what would you have me do with all the cows, have us do with all, if we all suddenly passed a law tomorrow that meat's banned and we all have to be vegan, what do we do with all the animals? And they go, well, we'll have to put them down, we'd have to cull them. I'm going, right, so I'm sorry. So
I think we should build them a really nice place with internet and TV,
right,
and let them.
Because they'll either be roaming the fucking streets, or we have to put them up in hotels, right? And that more government spending. So that's another argument I say to vegans is, what would you have me do with all the cows? Because they're still going to procreate and fucking, but what's going to happen? So that's the second thing. The third thing is, your cornfield, your arable cornfield or your soy field, when those combine harvesters and those plows go over that, not only are they turning over all the soil and they're releasing all that carbon that's being sequestered, and it's all going up into the atmosphere. Bad mistake number one. Plowing is not good for fields. We need the soil to settle and we need the cows to do the work. But the other thing with the plowing and everything is, thousands of animals and birds and snakes and voles and moles and mice are all being killed. So when you turn around to a vegan and you go, your tofu salad has killed more souls than my entire year's supply of ribeyes, who's the one with the animal cruelty? And you know what? They go, I'll have another jab. Hey, give me another jab. I mean, because they're fucking stupid fucking people.
That is a vivid image.
It's the Game of Thrones of fucking. It's like Mordor's. When you see a combine harvester going over.
It's crazy.
Animals, the blood is splattering. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But Jesus.
No. Well, and also the nutrition, the nutritional value and the taste. And that's what's really sad is we have been conditioned over the last 30 years to eat food that they would have, I think people from the 20s would have spit it out. Like this tastes like shit. Yeah. And we are just conditioned to eat this processed, horrible, sugary, oily garbage. And now I think your palate sort of there's a survival instinct where you have to be able to stomach whatever you have available to eat. And now it's really hard, to say like, but when you give somebody a fresh steak from a local farm, or fresh vegetables or apples that were picked within days, you can taste it and you're like, wow, that is delicious. But you didn't know what you were missing because you've just been conditioned to eat shit the entire time. And just like, Fruity Pebbles, that's a balanced breakfast. Well, I would like to know where they came up with balanced breakfast. Like, that is just a great marketing term, though. If somebody tells me it's a balanced breakfast, I mean, who am I to disagree?
Well,
I heard it on TV.
Ansel Keys is a lot to blame for the food pyramid that came out in the 60s, early 70s, the first food pyramid. The American Heart Association in the 1950s were the first organization to declare that meat was bad for your heart. Why? Because President Eisenhower had a heart attack while playing golf, and he liked his hamburgers, and Ike liked his burgers, and so therefore meat gives you heart disease. No one mentioned he smoked 60 cigarettes a day because, of course, all the doctors in those days, they all smoked.
Yeah.
No one talked about the bread in the bun on Eisenhower's. No. So the American
Yeah.
Heart Association immediately said meat equals heart disease
Mm-hmm.
because of the president having a heart attack. It's never, and they've never retracted it. And we're talking it's 75 years later, 80
Again,
years later.
think of all the money, all the lobbying, all the, like you said, all the huge industrial, private equity and public entity owned things that would be disrupted if sudden people are like, you know what? I don't think sugar's all that good for you, and I'm gonna stop eating it, and I'm just gonna eat, natural food and meat and eggs, and let me
Getting
see how
there.
that works.
So Nixon in the 70s, when there were tariffs and sanctions against the Soviet Union, as we said, because they were buying a lot of American wheat.
Hmm.
So you guys, the Americans were, say we in the West were selling wheat to the Soviet Union. But during the Cold War, that all stopped. So there was this massive surplus of wheat and grains in the United States. And so the U.S. government had all this surplus wheat and grains in the 70s. So what did they do? They created the food pyramid with
Yeah.
5 portions of wheat and grains at the bottom. They had to get rid of this shit. It was like a fucking fire sale of wheat and grains, man.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's what they did. Ansel Keys went, and sugar. Oh, let's, as you say. So it's every single decision about food has been politically motivated.
Yeah.
It's all about commerce, trade, surplus, and politics.
Yeah.
And when
No,
you realize
it is.
this, when you wake up and you realize this, you just go, if they're lying about that,
Yeah.
they are lying about everything.
Everything. No, they are. The beauty is, I think, so here's a bit of optimism again.
Please.
A touch of So once you do realize that, you also realize that you actually do have the power to control, which is ultimately, you can say, you know what, I'm going to just buy local food because it's natural. I'm going to eat the things that, came off the land the way that they were designed to do. And there is absolutely nothing stopping you from doing that. It's available. The beauty of local food is it is literally available everywhere. And yes, can I get mangoes that were grown in Michigan in January? No, I can't. So you can choose whether you want to sort of eat mangoes if you live in Michigan or not. And it's not to say that you're going to die if you eat mangoes, but I would eat mangoes that you can at least trace the origin if that's what you're going to choose to do.
Or
But
just eat mangoes when you go on holiday to Costa Rica.
yeah, exactly. That's probably the preference. And there's plenty of tasty things, that we have berries galore and apples galore in Michigan, and they're sweet too. I mean, you can absolutely control your own destiny. That's optimism number 1. Now here's optimism number 2 that might be a bit of a longer shot. But when you look at the way that the world is today, it is getting jumbled up. Like you said, you went from sort of this green left of center to just libertarian to realize that you can make your own choices. If you look even in America, you had a very staunch Democrat in Elon Musk who suddenly became a huge Trump supporter, who now they're in a big, tizzy about various things. You have the fact that you used to have to be a vegan and be a liberal, and you used to have to agree with all of that, and then you had to say no, it's big business and blah 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 to be a Republican. And now I think people are at least like, you know what? We're all like in this interchange here. Why don't we all just say, make up your own fucking mind on all this shit? And you don't have to say, if I think that, that one topic, I should believe this, then I have to believe everything that everybody believes on that side. You can say, I think that the food supply chain is fucked up and corrupt, and still consider yourself conservative, because now conservatives are thinking that. And you've got the RFK who went from sort of every side of the fence, and now he's out there making hopefully the changes that, or at least starting the change. It's going to take decades to undo what we've got, but banning dyes, that's a good start in America. Dyes that are illegal everywhere else in the world,
Mm.
but we just like eat them in 30 servings a day, including to our kids, of dyes that are known to create behavioral problems. And then we're saying, why is there so many ADHD kids in America? And we're giving them a bowl of red dye for breakfast. So, but you don't have, I'm hopeful. Again, this is where it's a bit of a flyer, but I'm hopeful that as these things start to change, people will maybe be more comfortable thinking independently and starting to realize that you have been sold to. You've been, like you said, whatever's on surplus suddenly becomes the healthiest thing in the world. It's the same thing with canola oil. They used, I saw a video about this actually. They used canola oil to lubricate planes in World War II. And when the war ended, they're like, what the fuck are we going to do with all this shit? And they just decided to put it in everything and sell it in food. And it's really an airplane lubricant is what you're eating. It's processed. It's processed in a way that would scare the shit out of you. It looks like a meth lab.
I know. It's gross.
And but hopefully people, I think there could be a changing where instead of saying I am a Republican, I am a Democrat, and so I've in one word I've told you everything I believe, because there's no way that you can believe everything just because it's one party. Maybe people are going to be like, you know what, I think that this, and I also think this, and it's.
But we weren't like that before. This is a social media thing that's polarized.
I think that's
everybody,
true.
and so you've got
I
to
think
be a
that's
red
true.
camp or a blue camp. I mean,
Yeah.
there was more nuance before social media. You could have dinner parties, and you could have people. Some were Republicans, some were Democrats. You could have Labour Party, Conservatives, Liberal Dems, Greens. But some people have different opinions on all sorts of different things. But it's social media and the media that is this divide and conquer game of, as Stephen Fry said, you've got two groups shouting at each other from across a crevasse, and you've got everyone in the middle going, stop screaming at each other,
Yeah.
I mean,
And I
with
think the
food
funniest thing, I think the thing that's crazy about that, so say 30, 40 years ago, what they were arguing about, even though they were being much more probably civil, I think were bigger differences. Today, you have two parties. They're almost the same fucking thing. They're the same corruption. They're the same insider traders. They're all being lobbied by the same people. And lobbyists change sides every time there's a new administration.
It's in power, right?
It's like you're just arguing over which one you want to do the same damn thing.
Yeah.
But you're arguing about it as if there's some tremendous difference.
One of my kind of messages that I hope to try and get across in my videos, especially in my Bill Burr impersonation, where I'm trying to do George Carlin and Bill. It's like George Carlin and Bill Burr had a love child. It's what I'm trying to do is George Carlin's patter, but with Bill Burr's delivery. Because obviously I'm not original myself, so people are like, do your own stand up. I'm like, no, it's like being naked on stage. I don't know if that's funny. I've got to do an impression of a comedian. So, sorry, Wilfred Burr, but, love you, mate, but sue me. But one thing I wrote to come out of my impression of Bill Burr's mouth was, what was the line? If it needs a commercial, you shouldn't probably be eating it.
I think it was if you need a cartoon character to tell you what to eat or something like that.
That's one of them. But even the bigger one is, beyond children's food, is if food needs a commercial.
It's a good point.
So only eat, have you noticed there's no ads on the TV for meat? There are no ads for eggs.
Yeah.
There aren't any. There's ads for oil, there's ads for corporations, there's ads for grains, but there's no actual commercials saying eat a steak. Or
because you're going to eat it anyway. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I work in advertising. I'm the guy that voices all those ads selling you shit that you don't want with money you don't have. But that's my job as a voiceover, is to convince you that you need this amazing special offer that must end Tuesday, offer must, Buy now, get one free.
Call
Offer
now.
must end Tuesday. You may lose your home if you don't get £50 on your mortgage or any other unsecured on offer ends Tuesday. Terms and conditions apply. That kind of crap. Or if it's an American ad, it's always like, symptoms may cause erectile dysfunction and death, all that kind of shit. Because everything has symptoms.
And that's what when you're selling food is when you say that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. These Fruit Loops and these Pop-Tarts may cause erectile dysfunction and death. They should actually say, if they had said,
Imagine
years ago,
that.
it could cause ADHD. By the way, this food will give you Asperger's. This food will.
That would be awesome if you had to give a
Yes, it
disclaimer for the food you sold.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
And I
may
think
this may cause
Robbie
behavioral
Kennedy,
changes
I think he's
in
going to
your.
do that a lot. I think it's what's going to happen. Bobby Kennedy's going to make sure that there's going to be labels on all the food that basically says that what you should have is disclaimers. And you remember when Trump was in the cabinet room and he said, Bobby's going to have a great in September. He's going to tell us that he knows what is the cause of autism. You're going to know the cause. And he said, well, I'm going to, and I reckon Kennedy knows the cause of autism is seed oils, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, all these kind of things. Because you can trace the lines of cases of autism on a graph with exactly when we started putting all this high fructose corn syrup and shit in our foods.
Well, and it's known
exactly.
And again, I'm no expert, but there's obviously something has changed, and the U.S. I know is one of the only countries, the only developed country where the life expectancy is declining. Which is
global.
Hard to believe, though.
I mean,
yeah.
But you know what? Talking about positive, sort of every cloud has a silver lining and all that. Being the hardliner that I am, Chris, there is one good thing to come about this. If we think back to Charles Darwin and the survival of the fittest, and if the population is going down, well, that solves your climate change problem. Let's get the world population a little smaller. Maybe our cities won't be so crowded. There won't be so many cars on the road because everybody's going to be fucking dying. So if you want to survive, seriously, I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. If you're so stupid that you're going to eat stupid food, smoke yourself, drink yourself, not do any exercise, and you die early, that's not my responsibility. I'm sorry, but, and quite frankly, I'm not a socialist, and I don't see why my hard-earned fucking taxes should go towards keeping you drinking and smoking and eating shitty food and not doing anything because you're too fucking fat. Why am I? No, I'm not talking about America here because you guys have got a fucked up health system. But in the UK and in Australia, where we have the health service is paid for by the taxpayer because it's a free at the point of use by anybody because it's a government-owned health system. I'm thinking, well, hang on. Every year that budget goes up. Every year my fucking taxes go up, and every year more and more people are using the health system, which actually should be called a sick system because it should be the National Sick Service, not the National Health. It's not a healthcare system; it's a sick care system.
Yeah.
But if you are literally saying, "I will give you all the drugs you need for free. I will give you all the medical care you need for free," but all this medical care you need is self-inflicted. Like if you are genuinely ill, of course, I think you should have help. The old socialist in me says the needy, the poor, the disabled, the really sick. Give me your
right.
Give me your poor.
You're tired. You're hungry.
You're tired. You're hungry.
Yeah.
That is where socialism works. That is what Bernie Sanders would. That is what we need to do. Got 10% of the 1% of the billionaires. They got to get them to help all the poor people. Get them the food. That's a very important thing to do, right? But what we've got with this welfare system, which is totally wrong, is that you have people who are in the welfare system who are only there because it's easy for them to be in the welfare system. They shouldn't be. If you've got 10 fingers and 10 toes, why are you going, handout, give me, give me, give me, give me? Because all you're doing is you're disincentivizing me to work harder. If you're going to take, if the government's just going to take more and more taxes,
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, you are disincentivizing me to make a profit. If you're just going to take my money,
Yeah.
so everybody falls, as Warren Buffett says. You know, you soon see when the
When the
tide goes out,
tide
you soon
goes
see
out,
who's
yeah.
floating around naked, and it's like, this is crazy. If
Yeah.
you are just gonna not do anything about the food you eat and the cigarettes you smoke and the alcohol you drink and the big
Hmm.
fucking 6 liters of Diet Coke you drink in a day, I'm sorry, but somebody should say, well, you've run
Yeah.
out of health credits. You're on your own now, kiddo.
Right.
But sorry, yeah, that's called. Some people would say that's fascist, but I don't think it is. I think it's being cruel to be kind.
Yeah. Well, and like yeah, this is such an existential question, but to undo it at this point, I don't even know how you would go about it.
You
And the
can't. You
only
just got to
thing
let people
that,
die. You got to let
yeah,
them
I
die.
think that's what it is. And like at some point, the music stops. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that point is 1,000 years from now or 20, but there is no
It's going
free
to be
lunch.
before November 2028. 4 years to flatten the curve, four
Yeah,
years to
yeah.
kill the obese. Um,
Well, that would be an ambitious timeline. I hope he does. But it's, I think at this point it's just it's the fear is like, can we outrun uh the time when some sort of technology, and I don't think it's AI. I don't think it's Chat GPT telling you how to send dirty text messages. I don't think that's going to be enough to get us out of this thing. Is it going to be some sort of nuclear fusion that suddenly makes energy free, or space travel, or some? I mean, but in the meantime, we're a sick, sick population of people on this planet. We're a divided population of people on this planet. We're an unambitious population, and when the music stops, I mean, because the problem is, and it would be unprecedented. A lot of things in history have some sort of precedent, and those precedents are when there's this huge division of classes. There becomes some sort of war between the classes and an uprising. The difference is there's never been a world with 8 billion people on it. To managing an uprising in France with a total population of 5 million is a lot different than a global uprising with 8 billion people that all have means of transportation and drones and everything. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's
well, we are
chew
probably.
on that.
Well, I think we are heading through we're coming up to the fourth turning. The end of the. I don't know if you've heard about the four turnings. It's a concept. Google it.
Mm.
This guy, they wrote a book about it. I can't think of the guy's name. He wrote a book. It's about the four turnings, which are normally in 25-year cycles. So each cycle is about a century, and the four turnings can basically be broken down into strong men create good times,
Oh
good
yeah,
times create
I've heard
weak
of that.
men,
Yeah,
weak men create bad times create strong men.
I have heard
And
that. Yeah.
when you think about that kind of cycle, we as humans, we will find a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe in Darwinism. I do believe in the survival of the fittest, the origin of species. And I do think that we are going to see a massive lot of a further reduction in population growth. I think we're going to see more pandemics, more diseases, more natural disasters, more wars, because we have to. We can't support 8 billion people. We just
Yeah,
can't.
it's a lot of
And I think,
motherfuckers.
yeah, and I think that if you are the elite and you're the WAF or you're the global elites, you kind of you want a smaller population because it's all about net zero climate change. It's all about climate change this, climate change that. Fair enough. All right, whatever. So if you're going to reduce the population, how do you reduce the population? It's really easy. You feed them shit food So they become reliant on drugs, which will kill them. And if along the way, the food companies and the drug companies can have a revolving door of C-suite executives so they can all fucking make money off this, you will end up with people dying, which will leave the planet for a smaller population who will be more aligned with healthy living. Now, Bill Gates wants to feed the world with his soy and his corn and everything. Bill Gates is the largest single private landowner in the United States. He has bought several million acres. He owns more land than anybody else in the US. And
Wow.
all he wants to do is plant monocultural soy, corn, beet, stuff like that, because he wants to. Because being the kind of the in quote philanthropist that he thinks he is, it's all about helping the poor, and he's going to go to Africa and feed the starving and all that. And okay, fine. There are too many people on the planet. It's just a fact. We have, unfortunately, gone beyond the philosophy of replace yourself. I don't have any children. I regret that. I wish I did. Now that I'm in my 50s, I feel I'm ready. I didn't think I was ready to have a kid until relatively recently, but I'm too old now. And there are countries in the world, in many, many poorer countries, and there are a lot of poor places in the United States. There's a lot of poor places in Australia, a lot of poor places in Europe. The poor tend to have more children because traditionally, through child mortality, not all of your children would survive, and you had to put children to work. But those days have gone. We don't need to put children to work unless you're in, Kolkata or something where certain places of Africa. But in the West, in so-called the civilized Western Anglosphere, if you like, children are not having to go and plow the fields and pick strawberries. But what's happening in those countries, in the continents, the Africa and the sub-Saharan continent, they can't do what they're doing because there's so many people that they're now coming as immigrants to the Anglosphere countries, to the Western countries, to Southern to Northern Europe, America, Australia, and there aren't those things for them to do, so they beg, and then we feel sorry for them, so that increases the welfare state. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think the issue is that there are too many people, and nobody, and it's the elephant in the room, because any politician that stands up and says there are too many people sounds like some kind of eugenicist.
Yeah, that would be a tough sell as a politician.
Well, it would. Suddenly you'd be called a eugenicist. You'd be called Hitler. You would. But it's the elephant in the room, because if we all search our souls, this Earth cannot sustain 8 billion people. We know this. We know it. David Attenborough said if it gets close to 9 billion, the Earth is done. It's finished. And this is a 98-year-old man who knows what he's talking about. And it's so I don't know if the solution is political in terms of they're gonna kill people. They're gonna kill people by whatever means they can, whether it's COVID or whether it's the Spanish flu, whether it's endless wars. This is why they want endless. I don't know, man.
War makes a lot of money too.
It may, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be the tinfoil hat brigade, but and to be honest with you, man, I don't lose sleep over this because I live a very privileged life in Australia, and I just want to get up every day and have my eggs and earn a bit of money. Because if I thought about this, what we're talking about on a daily basis, I would go mad. I would
Yeah, for sure.
Mad.
You can't. You couldn't let yourself.
You have to just go. I have no control. I'm 55. I might have another 40 years. If I live to 100, I've got another 45 years on this planet. I have every intention of living to 100 through being healthy. I've got 45 more years to go. if I do well for me, my family, my community, and I try and stick to my ideologies and my principles that I think are good for planet, good for people, that's all I can do. I can't
That is all anybody
control.
can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do anything else.
Hmm.
And I think I can't control where we're going to be in 100 years, or if we're going to conquer Mars, or what happens if. I can't control that at all. I can't.
Yeah.
Someone asked me in a podcast interview last year, "What if you're wrong about carnivore? What if eating all this meat that you eat? Because I don't eat vegetables, don't touch them." Said, "What if you get coronary heart disease and you get a heart attack?" I said, "Then you'll all know that I was wrong, but I'll be dead, so I won't care." But
That's yeah.
like Ricky Gervais, Stephen Colbert said to Ricky Gervais, aren't you worried about what happens to you after you die? He says, "Why would I be? I'll be dead."
Yeah. Well, that's it.
And Colbert said, "Are you afraid of dying?" He said, "Well, no, because I won't know about it.
Right.
I'll be alive 1 minute and then I'll be dead the next. I won't know about it." Because as Ricky Gervais said, the split second before you die, you're alive. It's pretty binary. So,
Yeah.
but the trick is in life, Chris, is to have a really long life and a very quick death. That's the trick. But with the food system the way it is, and with the pharmaceutical system the way it is, and with the addiction to pharmaceutical drugs and the addiction to shitty food, what we're having is we're having a very, very slow death.
That's true. Very true.
And what we don't want, they tell you, oh, you're 50, your eyesight goes, your man boobs come, the spare tire, your cardiovascular, your diabetes, get on statins. Oh, you'll be on statins for the rest of your life. Oh, you'll be on Ozempic just have Ozempic, you'll lose weight. Oh, you'll be on it for the rest of your life. And you're going, hang on a minute. So hang on, I've got to be on pharmaceutical medication for the rest of my life just to stay alive. Or I can change my diet, exercise, move my body, get some sunshine, get vitamin D every fucking day. Don't put on sunscreen. You don't need it. Just don't be in the sun when your shadow's shorter than you. If the shadow is shorter than you, stay in the shade. That's what the lions do. But when your shadow is longer than you, enjoy the sun. When you sweat in the sun, don't wash it off. That's your body making its own sunscreen through the vitamin D coming through your skin. Your sweat is its own sunscreen. So if you leave it on for 2 hours after sweating in the sun, don't wash it off. Natural sunscreen. When you cover yourself in sunscreen, you're covering yourself with chemicals. So number one, vitamin D, get in the sun. Number two, take your rubber-soled shoes off. Go for a walk on the park. Go and stand in soil. Go and stand on grass. Go and stand in a field. Even walking around your house barefoot is better than wearing fucking shoes, because you need to ground. You need to have the energy from the earth coming up through your feet. You need to move your body every morning when you get out of bed. Don't get out of bed and turn on your phone and look at your fucking Facebook. Don't even have a coffee. Get out of bed and move your body. Stretch. Get your energy moving. Tap your lymph glands. Tap all your lymph node places. Move your body. Do some punching. Do a bit of tai chi. Do a bit of breathing. Get under some water. Get the shower going. Be invigorated. Eat some eggs. Eat a steak. Eat protein and fat. Don't eat carbs when you get out of bed. Stop that cortisol spike. Stop that insulin spike first thing in the morning. And then don't overeat. Stop eating when you're no longer hungry. If you're not hungry, stop eating. Don't eat sugar. If you need to have alcohol, I like a glass of wine. I like a beer every now and then, but I don't drink. I used to drink every night. I'd have a bottle of wine, whiskey, martini every fucking night. No thanks. I barely drink now and I'm feeling so much better. But I like a glass of wine. It's okay. It's all right. It's my little treat. Don't have dessert. Don't have the bread. Don't have the fucking sugar. If you're going to drink milk, try and drink raw milk or cold pressed milk. Don't go through milk that's going through a chemical process. All of these things will help you have a long life. And then you're going to die. We're all going to die. But you might as well die being relatively fit and try and live as long as possible than give up in your 40s and go, well, I can just get this statin, or I can just get this
Hmm.
Ozempic, or I can just have these pills, or I can just be on metformin for my diabetes, or I can just be on these fucking beta blockers for my heart. You can fix everything with your diet, everything, because we're all going to die, and I hope we all have really long lives. But for those of us, those in the system, Chris, who are not willing to do the work on themselves, they are going to die earlier.
A really
But the
long death.
amount, it's a really long death, but that
Mm.
long death is being paid for by the system that we pay into. It's our money. We are helping these people have a long death with our
Mm.
taxes. The nicest thing to do would be to just put them down like fucking. I mean, I know this sounds stupid, but
No.
euthanize. If I just fucking euthanize me. Just give me a fucking, just put me to sleep. I can't.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on thousands of dollars worth of fucking drugs for the rest of my life just so I can go. Fucking put me to sleep. Kill me. Seriously. Put me
You
on
know,
fucking. Put me in a
it's
stunt. I'll
true.
be a stunt man in a movie, as Bill Hicks said. Let's see Did you see Gramps' head pop off his neck? Wow.
It looks so real.
It looks so real.
No, you know what? I really like that. A long life and a short death, and
Yeah.
we're definitely doing the opposite. And man, that is a super good perspective.
I think so.
Interesting,
And
man.
it's, I don't know. It's you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
You cannot, but we all have the option. You have. That's the beauty is, you can have. You can drink. You can be the horse that is at water, and you can drink, and you do that by eating logically. And you don't have to. You don't have to pay somebody and do some diet that you saw on
Yeah,
TV. Just fucking eat the way that you think it should have been, like an
yeah.
animal and some plants and things that just came out the way that they started and didn't have to get sold to you with a cartoon character, as you said, and didn't have to get sold to you at all. Honestly, and man, it's
Have you
on
heard?
point.
Well, like one thing that we really should all be doing when we go shopping, if we're not buying fresh food, if we're buying food that's in a packet with a
Hmm.
sticker on it, which
Yeah.
I don't buy any of that anymore. I only eat meat and eggs, and my wife eats vegetables and fruit. But we don't eat anything that comes in a packet. But if you
Hmm.
do have to have things come in a packet or in a jar, we don't have anything in a jar either. We just don't. We used to have fridge and cupboards are full of jars of mayonnaise and sauces and pickles and all gone. We just threw it all out. All the oils, it's all fucking gone. Everything. But if you do have to eat something that is from the middle bit of the supermarket, they say just shop on the
Right.
aisle on the outside. So everything in the middle, don't touch. But if you do have to eat that stuff, buy the things that have the fewest ingredients. Because if something has a list of ingredients that looks like a chemistry experiment, you shouldn't be eating it. If you
Yeah.
can't pronounce the shit that's on the label, put it back. As I says, my Gordon Ramsay, put it back. You fucking muppets, big boy. Yes, it's like just
Yep.
put it. But
Well, what would be
unfortunately,
interesting? I'd like to take this as an experiment. I'd like to take one of those chemicals and just get a
yeah.
bowl of it, and then give it to somebody and say, "Would you eat this? Would you smell it? It smells like gasoline or something." And you're like, "Fuck no, I wouldn't eat that." Well, you do every day.
Man, it's we have to. And the argument, the excuse, so the excuse from most people is, yeah, but it's so expensive to eat like that. You go, hang on. You got 12 eggs that are from a factory farmed place where all the hens are all cramped up together and they're all swimming in their own shit. And they're, let's say it's how much are 12 eggs? What, $6, $7?
So God, to right now there's a shortage in the U.S. They're probably
Yeah.
9 to 10 if you
For the
buy them in the store.
cheapest, for the cheapest.
Maybe okay, so say 7, but you're hard pressed.
Seven.
You might not even find them. honestly, at this
Okay.
point. You're going to pay
And
for them.
right next to the cheapest, you've got 12 eggs that are grass fed, free range, pasture fed, and there's only 40 hens per hectare, and it's from a farm up the road. And guess how much more they are than the 12 cheap eggs?
I can tell you because we sell them and they're
Yeah,
almost the same.
it's about
Maybe,
20, maybe 20% more.
yeah, sometimes not even.
Sometimes not even.
Yeah.
And yet, and yet, a lot of people who really, they're standing there with their cigarette, on their phone, drinking their whatever, going, I'm going to have the cheaper eggs because I can't afford those expensive ones. And you're like, it's $2 more, man. It's $2 fucking.
Yeah.
Well, I just had a cappuccino. I had a latte next to Starbucks. That was $8. Well, what? So you're refusing to support the local or farmer who has 40 chooks. That's how we say chickens in Australia. 40 chooks per hectare, which are free range pasture fed.
Hmm.
You're unwilling to pay an extra $2 to support that farmer. You'd rather give $8 to Starbucks for a venti fucking milkshake with fucking syrup in it and get your cheap eggs where the birds are treated really badly, where they're awful, where their claws are all cut off. You look at the videos of the way they treat these poor little chickens in these feedlots. It's disgusting. For $2 more, if everybody spent that extra $2 on the 40 per hectare hens, that big company, Purdue, whatever they are, big chicken companies, they might go out of business, or they might have to change their business practices in order to take some of the market share back.
Yeah.
That is how we change the system, is by our own pockets, our own wallets, our own pocketbooks. But unfortunately, so many people are in this weird internal dialogue that it's really expensive to eat organic or to eat local or to eat raw to eat whole foods. That it's not expensive. People
No.
say to me, "How much money do you spend on meat? You must spend a fortune." I go, "Well, I have a Scotch fillet, I have a ribeye every day, and I have 6 eggs every day." And that's what I eat. I have 6 eggs and a Scotch fillet. They go, that, and they add it up. And that's really expensive. And I go, yeah, so let's have a look at your shopping bill. I don't spend that much on eggs and meat. And I go, hang on. So what, you've got popcorn, Doritos, Coke, you've got your vitamin C supplements, you've got iron supplements, you've got your mayonnaise, your ketchup, and suddenly, and your snacks, you've got your Oreos, you've got your biscuits, you've got your peanuts, I don't snack. The only thing I snack on is biltong. I just eat chief and barbell biltong, fresh, proper, grass-fed biltong, and butter. If I'm hungry, I'll have a spoonful of butter, grass-fed butter. That's all I eat. So my food bill is cheaper
I'm
than
sure.
most people who say, isn't it expensive to be on a carnivore diet? No,
Yeah.
because I'm not eating any snacks, any candy, and I'm not having supplements. Do you know how much supplement? Do you know these people, they go to the pharmacy and they get their iron, their zinc, their B12, their folate, their collagen. They're like, hang on, all that's in meat, don't you? You know all that shit, all those pills you're eating to go with your spirulina smoothie, with your banana mango shit that isn't from Thailand, but it was frozen and packaged by China, so healthy. Actually, all this goodness that you're giving some vitamin company in Wisconsin. No, they're probably in fucking Manitoba for all I know. No, they're probably in China. They're a Chinese vitamin company. They're Chinese supplements. And all you need to do is eat a fucking steak, and you would get all the
Nutrient
vitamin
density.
B12, zinc, iron
Yeah.
that you need, the collagen,
Yeah.
the carotene, the carnitine. You get everything, the omega-3 fatty acids. You get all of that from steak and eggs, and you would save hundreds and hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars a year
Oh yeah.
on these plastic bottles with all these pills in.
No, we had a guy that worked with Locavana that did this. He did this great post. He took a bag of potato chips, and if you extrapolate the per pound of potatoes that you're paying, you're paying like $16 a pound for those potatoes. Potatoes cost, $2 a pound. You're paying, so you think you're saving money, right? Oh, I can't eat local. You buy one bag of potato chips, you just paid $16 a pound for potatoes. Like all of that processed bullshit is so much more, especially for the nutrients that you're getting,
Mm.
which is minimal, to get
Yeah.
the amount of nutrients you need that you would eat on a whole food diet. And if you go and
Yeah.
try and eat that on a processed diet, you're going to
Yeah.
spend multiple 6 to 10 times what you're going to spend per nutrient density.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
wild. It's
We
wild.
need to. It's and we got to educate kids in schools. This is. You said it might take 1,000 years or what? I don't know what
I
100
don't. I
years,
hope.
10
I
years.
no. I hope
You know,
like maybe decades to undo decades
but
of bad,
I
but
don't know.
maybe
I
not.
think it'll be quicker, man. I think it'll be quicker because all you have to do is get one generation.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, you know what? That's a really good point, actually. And that the thing about it in America and hopefully globally, the young people in their 20s are talking about this stuff. Nobody ever talked about that when I was in my 20s. Nobody gave one shit, and we just ate Pop Tarts and thought it was a balanced breakfast. But now, there might be. You're right about that. It's one generation, and it could be the current one because they are way more in tune to this than anybody my age ever was. So
My
hopefully that's the
nephew
case.
is 16. He'll be 16 in a couple of months, right? And he's very, very top amateur rugby player. Plays rugby really well.
Cool.
He's
I
being
love rugby.
scouted. He's pretty much on the carnivore diet. He eats rice, but he mainly eats meat and eggs.
Mm,
He's fit. He's really ripped for his age. And
yeah.
I've known him since he was 4. And the amazing thing about him and his friends, when I talk to his mates, is they're all into your Alex Hormozy and your
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Tates and your Jordan Petersons and da 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 da. Andrew Tate, I've got issues with him, and he's a bit weird, but his message is actually pretty good. But there's a lot of these guys, these kind of the alpha sigma male kind of in the man space, where the previous generation, Gen Z, the current Zoomers who are kind of, I guess they're 19 years old to 25 at the moment, 19 to
Mm-hmm.
28. They're the men in that generation, through the food they've been eating, have got the lowest testosterone levels. And they're all kind of confused about their gender identity, and not all of them, but there's a massive groundswell of really wet men who have wet voices. They've all got really wet voices. They've got wet bodies. They don't look manly. They don't, but this new Gen Alpha, they're almost like, I can see the Humphrey Bogarts and the Steve McQueens and the Cary Grants coming out of it maybe someday. I think Gen Alpha is going to present a lot of people who might be quite interesting, and they might start learning how to dress properly and be proud of what they wear. When you see all these Gen Zs and millennials who really just dress like, when you see 30-year-old men still dressing like fucking teenagers, you're going, what the fuck? Whereas Gen Alpha, the generation you're talking about who are into
Yeah.
their food, they're rejecting the woke thing, they're rejecting all the trans thing, they're rejecting all the fucking DEI bullshit. They're kind of going, actually, we need, because there's a massive mental health issue with men. Men are being really, especially straight white guys. Straight white men are being told you're toxic, you're evil, you're bad. You've had it good for so long. You now give everybody else a go. Well, DEI didn't earn it, in my opinion. It's the most racist thing. DEI. Let's hire someone based on their skin color or their gender, or let's hire someone based on what they got between their legs. No, let's live in a meritocracy. So what's happening with Gen Z is they've just been given everything. They've been given all this junk food to eat. They've been given all this. Their parents have just given them phones and said, just do what you want. And temper tantrum, they get what they want. And so they've turned into really spoiled, entitled university students going, Palestine, gay, fuck off. But Gen Alpha, my nephew's generation, they are rejecting that. And they're actually saying, no, we need to be strong. We need to be sovereign. We need to know who we are. We need to be gentlemen. We need to, look after our family. We need to go and earn money and be the man, and be the man that changes the light bulb and fixes the car. There's nothing wrong with a man being manly and a woman being feminine. And Gen Z's forgotten that. Gen Z is they've lost the whole thing about chivalry and gallantry. That's all gone out the window. I know I sound like an old-fashioned conservative, but I suppose I am. But it's like, but Gen Alpha, I have faith in Gen Alpha, and I think
That is
this
good. That is good to
generation,
hear.
they know. My nephew knows who RFK Jr. is, and I have friends who don't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm feeling very positive for the future.
Good.
I think
Man, that's awesome.
I think we're going through an interesting turning. I think we're getting through the weak times breed strong men.
Mm.
Weak men. Hard times breed strong men. We're going through hard
Yeah.
times right now, and I think out of these hard times are going to come strong men. And I think you and I will be in a position where we can hopefully just sit back and watch the next generation look after our planet and care for our world, and actually reject the ideology that has been coming from this net zero climate
Mm-hmm.
Greta Thunberg wet dream shit for 20 years now. And I think people are beginning to see through it.
I think so too. I think so too. It's good to hear that. And I've heard that. I've heard that from multiple people. You know, I do think there is a lot of hope in the future. I do think that, the young men that are coming up are going to be good torchbearers, and that's all you can really hope for. So, we have a lot more data. I think we have a lot more transparency. A lot of that comes from the technology, the internet. That the narrative that was pushed in the 80s and the 90s, they had a monopoly on communications. If you had news outlets and the fiscal budget, you could create whatever narrative you want. And now there's more information. It makes it more important to decipher what
Yeah.
information you're gonna believe. But at least there's more data out there, and I think people, like you said, you start eating a certain way, you feel amazing. Well, that's all the data you really need anyway, for an individual, I think, to buy in. And so the people are out there. It's not just the industry's pushing things down your throat and the government telling you what the food pyramid is. You can make your own decisions now, and if we have that data, and then we have a group, a generation that's ready to buck what was forced upon people for the last century. That could be a winning combination.
Yeah. And also, another thing to add to that, everyone's scared about AI and
Yeah,
going,
not me.
we're not going to know what's real and what's not real anymore. I
Yeah.
think this is actually a good thing, because what's going to happen is Gen Alpha are going to go,
Mm.
I'm not going to watch TikTok anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know
everything is
what's
bullshit.
real.
Yeah,
I don't
I'll
know if
just
it's
make
real.
my own mind up on everything.
I'm going to make my own mind up, and I'm actually going to interact with real people.
Yeah.
As an actor, I'm not worried, because I'm thinking it's going to bring back live theater. As a musician,
Mm-hmm.
live theater. If AI is a tool, it has its place. I use AI. It's
Mm-hmm.
great. Is it going to take my job? Yeah, probably. Is it going to ruin my passion? No. I'm
Yeah,
still going to do what I do, but there are going to be people who are going to seek out things that aren't AI.
that's
And I
true.
think people are going to start rejecting all this junk food of TikTok and Instagram and all these little shorts and everything, where it's just people doing bullshit.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
once you've seen an AI video, you go, well, I don't. There's no talent in that. Nobody's done
yeah.
anything. Somebody's prompt engineered and put it on Instagram. And they're just doing it for likes. And eventually, there's going to come a point where I think Gen Alpha are going to go, I'd rather be outside kicking a ball around. I'd rather be out on my bike. I'd rather be, you know.
That's super interesting. Yeah, and you know what I said? I talked with somebody about this recently. So like when I grew up, I was in the very interesting generation where I didn't have computers in elementary school,
Me
and I
neither.
kind of had them in middle school,
Oh
and
yeah,
then a
that's right.
little more like in high school. But like the internet really was still like not a big thing until I was in college. And even then it was like, we didn't we had telephones, fixed telephones. And then it really wasn't until I was after, yeah, it wasn't until after college that Facebook was even a thing. I remember my younger brother had it, and he told me, "Oh, I had never heard of it." I was already past that point. I was in the military, didn't get
Yeah.
it. I don't think they didn't really want you to have it back then anyway, and never got it. But for us, it was like we knew life before it, and then we knew life after it. So I think a lot of people like my age and a little like anything from like 40, 50 up, they are big on Facebook and everything. They were the first generation in their 20s. Everything had to be posted on Facebook and pictures but the difference was they were so used to real life, this thing was a novelty. Now, for the younger generation, that's the only thing. So real life is going to be the novelty. They're going to be like, everybody just, like you said, everything's bullshit on TikTok and Facebook
Yeah.
and Instagram. I'm just going to go outside and talk to people because that, for me, is the thing that's neat now.
Yeah.
And man, there is a tremendous amount of hope, and I do think been a dark time and a learning curve for humanity. Just the scope and scale of what technology has enabled, but
And
there
what
you're
happens? But connect the dots with me here, Chris, because if you've got younger people going out talking to each other, that social group, that communication face to face becomes, hey, have you thought about not eating those Doritos and having this steak?
yeah.
Hey, have you thought maybe you're not going to need a jab because you've got immunity? Hey, why don't we do something? Why don't we get fit? And so what happens is that what we've been talking about, it happens organically with young people because they see the older generation as fat, sick, and nearly dead and go,
Yeah.
I don't want to be that. I'm going to do the
That's true.
opposite of fat, sick, and nearly
That's
dead.
true
I'm
too.
going to be fit, well, and
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
then they start looking, well, what do I need to do? And then they come across people like you and me, and they go, oh, I see, they get it. And what do
Right.
they do? And so our community suddenly becomes the kids are being educated not at school, but they're being educated by people who really give a shit, like us, hardliners. I've said some pretty outrageous things in this chat, and I'll probably be cancelled and thrown to the lions because of it. But it's done all in good fun. But the young kids are going to see, oh, actually, that kind of makes sense. That I can see what
Yeah.
you're talking about there.
Yep.
And they hopefully, when kids start talking to each other, they start goading each other to let's eat healthy. Let's go to the farmer's market. Let's get that box of locally sourced things. Hey, Mum, don't buy that shit anymore. I don't want to eat that anymore. Oh, but little Timmy, you no, I don't want to eat it because the only guy I know who eats that shit is fucking fat and he plays on his TikTok every day and I'm out here winning medals for sprinting the 100-yard dash. I mean, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
That's it, man. That is it. There is hope. I think that's the big takeaway. I'm going to walk away from this with there is hope. So I told my kids this morning, I'm like, oh man, I have a podcast with a comedian. He's been on Bluey. This is going to be awesome. And then we go down to the Malthusian, like overpopulation hole.
I mean, why not, right? But this is the great thing about these long chats. I mean, Joe
Yeah, it
Rogan,
is.
started it. You would never ever. If I spoke like this on mainstream media
Oh yeah.
as a celebrity, if I was famous and I said this on mainstream media, I would be crucified. I'm done. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Oh, I do. I do.
And
But
so
you
I don't
you
care.
take everything is taken in context, and the solutions to these problems are dynamic. And man, it's but it has I've learned this has been super interesting. I love this
Me too, man. It's been great.
this take, and I
Sorry if
really
I've been a
appreciate
little
that. No, man, this is cool. This is cool. I got one unrelated story I was thinking about. So because I said I wasn't good at impressions,
Yeah.
but I did. So when I was a kid, for some reason, I don't know why, there was I would get home from school. I think I must have been probably in middle school because I was on the bus. I wasn't driving. I'd get home from school. Nobody was home yet. For some reason, on one weird obscure channel, some sports channel, they would play Australian rules football. And I fucking loved it. Like it is the best sport on the planet. And I used to root for the Melbourne Magpies, like the black and white stripe thing I can remember. And I would watch it every time I got
Collingwood.
home from school.
Collingwood.
Is
Yeah,
that the name of
Collingwood.
it?
They're the black and white stripes. Collingwood. They're in
What
Melbourne.
the who's that? I like the Melbourne Magpies, I thought.
I
Was
thought
do
the
they have a
Magpies were. Let me have a look. Because the
I'm gonna check
Magpies
it
are
out too. I
Newcastle.
could be this was a long time ago and I'm not like definitely not
The,
definitely not like an expert. Anyway, I would watch this, and so then
yeah.
I was in this bar, and
Yeah, it's Collingwood, man. I was
it's
right. The
Collier.
Magpies are Collingwood. Yeah, they're called the Magpies.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I was in this bar in Reno, Nevada, and there was a bachelorette party, and
Uh oh.
they
Uh
were
oh.
doing some sort of a game. I don't like they were trying to do a scavenger hunt of some sort, and I
Yeah.
guess that the bride to be had lived in Australia at some point, so they were trying to find a guy that lived or a guy that was Australian, and they came up to our group. They're like, "Is anybody from Australia?" And I was like, "Yeah, mate." And so then they were like, and so I convinced them that I was from Australia, and they were like, "If you're really from Australia, and you can get the bride to believe it, then we can check this box." And they were all stoked, and so she started grilling me about Australia, and I don't honestly know that. I don't know anything. I couldn't tell you on a map like where Melbourne is or anything. She's asking, she's like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, Melbourne, and she's like, however I did it, I pulled it off and I actually got her to believe. I couldn't do it today. But
Wow.
so I guess, maybe I was a method actor at that moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's
But
insane,
I think
right?
that's what it was. Like the fact that I knew what Australian football was I think because she
Yeah.
was skeptical. She's like, yeah, I'm not sure. But then she's like, what did, and I was like, I was a big fan of the Magpies in Melbourne, watching Aussie rules. And
Aussie rules, mate. Carlton, Mel, yeah, yeah, in Sydney. Oh, mate, yeah. No, I don't know much about. I'm not really into sport at all.
yeah.
But I do a lot of voiceovers for sport because I do a lot of
Oh, yeah.
ads for Fox Sport and stuff here, and we've just got the state of origin at the moment, which is Queensland versus New South Wales, and the Queensland are in maroon and New South Wales are in light blue, and that's rugby, mate. Because New South Wales is a big rugby state, whereas Victoria is a Aussie rules state.
Mm.
So
Oh,
there's
okay.
there's only like a couple of Aussie rules teams in New South Wales, but it's mainly Victoria and South Australia are Aussie rules, whereas New
Ah.
South Wales and Queensland are rugby states,
Hmm.
and everybody plays cricket.
Cricket. You're
Which
not going to get me on the cricket. I watched cricket when
me
I was in
neither.
Africa. Oh my
I
God, is
know,
that
no,
boring?
no. You've seen more
Holy
cricket than I have,
shit.
mate. I
I mean, I even
I
think
only like
baseball is
three
boring, but
sports, man.
cricket, oh,
I
terrible.
watch. I watch. I watch. I like a bit of World Cup football. I support England when they're
Mm,
playing in the World Cup or the
yeah.
Euros. But that's it. I don't follow other soccer. And I love a good boxing match every now and
Mm,
then. I like watching two
yeah, yeah.
guys
That's
slug it
fun to
out.
watch.
Tyson
MMA.
and
Yeah,
people like that.
yeah.
Just the boxing. I'm only into the boxing. Haven't seen any
Mm.
MMA. I like a good tennis match.
Tennis is fun.
Wimbledon,
Yeah,
but my first love is sport wise is Formula One. I'm a
yeah. That's a
huge,
good one. That's
I'm a
fun to
car
watch.
nut. I'm a petrol head when it comes to
Oh
motor
yeah,
racing.
that's
And I
fun.
used to watch the IndyCar, the Champ Car stuff when Nigel Mansell was there in the '90s with Paul Tracy and those
Yeah,
guys and Jacques Villeneuve before he came over. But
that's fun.
yeah, but no rugby. So being an Australian, being in Australia, and not being into cricket or rugby or Aussie rules football, sometimes I just can't contribute to conversations because I suddenly go, I'm the English guy that I'm the actor that isn't into sport. Well, they say, well, go and get around at the bar then, Rupert. Go and buy the drinks, mate, because we can't. You got to go and buy the drinks and get some pizza and chips for everybody. And I'm like, I'm just gonna go home, get an Uber, go home, mate.
Oh man. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been awesome to have this conversation. I know you're going to be a judge at the beef roundup,
Yeah, man.
and I'm
Steaky
going to try and
steak.
make it out that. Yeah, that's
That'd
going to
be
be awesome.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be
I'm going to
so
try
cool,
and make
man.
it
That'd
out
be
there. That's
great.
in August in Wyoming, you said.
Yeah,
So yeah, maybe we'll follow up. We'll definitely keep in touch, but it would be great to meet out there, and that's very
that'd be
cool. Be
so
a
good.
celebrity
Yeah,
judge at the beef roundup, and
I know. Who
that's pretty
knows?
sweet.
And I'm going to do some videos when I'm there and maybe come up
Very
with a new
cool.
character. I might have to do an American cowboy kind of chap. That'll be quite
Oh
fun.
yeah, that'd be great.
I'll be listening to all the accents and I'll be soaking them up, going, "Oh, okay."
There you go. So yeah, and I would definitely recommend checking out the Instagram. Just hysterical videos, but perfectly capturing the satire and the ridiculousness of what goes on in this world. And so you do a phenomenal job of that. Just give us some social, give us the where to find all this stuff.
I'm at Rupert underscore Degas, Degas, like the French painter Degas.
There you go.
So Rupert underscore Degas. I'm on Instagram and YouTube and LinkedIn. I don't post stuff on LinkedIn. I do other stuff on LinkedIn, but it's mainly Instagram. I don't do Facebook, but apparently my Instagram's linked to my old Facebook account. Things are going onto Facebook, but I have no idea because I'm not on Facebook. But my
Right.
wife tells me I am, but I can't
Yeah.
get onto my Facebook account because I don't have login details. So that's just a thing. So it's someone said I was suing Facebook the other day. I'm like, really? Okay. So it's mainly Instagram, and then
Yeah.
yeah, it's about it really.
Yeah, it's funny stuff. It's hysterical. It's on point, and really appreciate it. You're a talented dude, and
Thank you, man. I appreciate
man,
that. Thank
it's
you.
been really fun and interesting talking to you. And I look forward to doing it again, hopefully in Wyoming. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, man, that'd be great. Face to face.
Face to face, like it was intent, like nature intended.
Yeah.